Love disguising big bad wolf versus best to comforting little white rabbit, forceful seizure, swordsmanship for love, rebirth 1v1, double cleanliness. In her past life, Song Mingzhu was jealous of Pei Xiao's love for Shen Yunyun, designed Shen Yunyun, and lost their child. Pei Xiao also punished her and gave her to other men. When she was tormented and on her deathbed, Song Mingzhu ended up being buried alive and died tragically. After being reborn, she did not stay by Pei Xiao's side, but chose to leave. When Pei Xiao turned around, he found the missing woman and searched the entire imperial city overnight. Song Mingzhu dragged her suitcase and was blocked by the bodyguard at the airport. Pei Xiao was fierce and threatened, "I'm on the run, my leg is broken." Chapter 1 is truly worthy. It was a woman raised by Pei Xiao before. You are listening at novel full.audio. Please, don't fight anymore. Don't hit me again. Song Mingzhu knelt on the ground with a slightly raised lower abdomen, covered in blood and pleading. Her once black and beautiful long hair has now been cut off. Her entire eye socket sank in, and she lived like a mentally ill person, with a foul smell all over her body. This is the third year that Song Mingzhu has been imprisoned in the basement. Mindless and unclear. She didn't know how to make it through these 3 years. Every day, this man drives her through inhumane torment, and now she is pregnant with the seed of this man again. Electric shock, whip, needle puncture. She endured such torment day and night, countless times. 3 years ago, due to Song Mingzhu's jealousy of Pei Xiao's love for Shen Yunyun, he secretly drugged her and killed their child. So Pei Xiao punished her and gave her to the old man in front of him. Now she can never forget. Pei Xiao's gaze was fierce, and he said to her coldly, "Mingzhu, if you do something, you should be punished. From now on, leave the imperial capital and redeem Yunyun's children well." I was wrong. I was really wrong. Song Mingzhu never stops regretting. Every day here, she is begging extravagantly that one day Pei Xiao can save her. She wants to run, but she can't run at all. Every time she is caught back, waiting for her is even more cruel punishment. The old man grabbed her hair and excitedly lifted Song Mingzhu up. "You shout. Shout louder, I want to see who else can come and save you. I truly deserve to be the woman raised by Pei Xiao in the past. When I was just sent over, I really wished I could die on you. Are you still thinking that Pei Xiao can come and save you? I tell you, don't be delusional anymore. 3 years ago, when he gave you to me, he had already married Miss Shen Yunyun from the Shen family. Take a look, what you look like now, ha ha ha. You're just a pair of broken shoes that I've played with. No, it won't. He can't marry Shen Yunyun. Pei Xiao promised her." Song Mingzhu cried and shook her head, as if unable to accept this fact. The next second after speaking, the man suddenly untied his belt, pinched her neck and pushed her against the wall. Behind her, insult her. I don't know how long it has been. Song Mingzhu was not fully clothed and slowly slid down from the wall. The light in her eyes gradually dimmed, and blood flowed from her lower body, as if unaware of the pain. She lay motionless on the ground. After 3 years of constant torture, Song Mingzhu had the first thought of not wanting to live. Because she believed that Pei Xiao would come back and take her away. But after waiting for 3 years, he still didn't come. As early as the first day she was sent here, she had already been destroyed. He married Shen Yunyun, and Pei Xiao had long abandoned her. Even if he comes and saves her, what else can he do? Pei Xiao cannot accept a broken shoe anymore. I can't go back. I won't go back at all. Wait until the old man leaves. Song Mingzhu slowly got up from the ground, used her last bit of strength, picked up the tool used by the man on the ground to torture her, and forcefully inserted it into her heart. Pupils dilated, blood in the mouth spewed out in big gulps. Feeling a familiar pain, it spread all over my body. I looked up through the only window and saw the night outside, clear and starry. Song Mingzhu shed 2 clear tears, but in the end, she fell into a pool of blood. Only one breath left. Song Mingzhu only has the last breath. When he opened his eyes, he saw that he was buried in the soil. The man took a shovel and bit by bit, covered her with soil. Bean-sized raindrops hit her eyes until her gaze became pitch black, and the voices around her seemed to have quieted down. Pei Xiao, I regret it. I really regret it. Why did you let me meet you, let me experience these things? Why are you so cruel to me? But why? Even if I'm going to die, it's still you who comes to mind in the end. Pei Xiao. If we could start over again, I will never interfere with your relationship with Shen Yunyun again. I will never fall in love with you again. In the end, with no sound in her ears and her eyes still open, Song Mingzhu fell into pitch black at some point. Song Mingzhu is dead. Dead silently. Died in the torrential rain of the night. Died in the quiet night. The body was forever buried in the ruins of the garbage dump. In 2007, Emperor City People's Hospital. Mr. Pei, your sister is awake. Song Mingzhu felt herself immersed in the sea, afraid of not being able to land. In the end, she grabbed the floating wood and took a breath of air. When she woke up in an instant, she took a deep breath of air. Looking at the white ceiling in front of her, she smelled the smell of disinfectant before realizing it. Mr. Pei. Pei Xiao. Song Mingzhu's eyes were incredulous as she stared blankly at the man walking in from the outside. At this moment, I saw Pei Xiao walking in an expensive black suit, with a mature temperament that was both ascetic and charming, with deep and cold features. Seeing him, Song Mingzhu suddenly pulled out the needle on the back of her hand and knelt in front of Pei Xiao, tears streaming down her face. She grabbed his suit pants and said, "Brother. I was wrong. I will be obedient in the future, and I will never get angry with you again. Please, don't give me to anyone else." Pei Xiao slowly squatted down, his deep and cold eyes showing a gentle and worried expression. "Pearl. What happened? Who bullied you?" Tell my brother." Song Mingzhu looked at Pei Xiao in front of her with tears streaming down her face. She was instantly shocked and said, "Brother. Brother. Not right. Pei Xiao is already in his 40s, how could he be so young?" She saw Pei Xiao, who was young and only 20.8 years old. Song Mingzhu stared straight at him, as if trying to see his appearance clearly. She reached out and touched Pei Xiao's face, which was warm, with no wrinkles on her handsome face. He had a scar on his eye that she had cut off, but now why hasn't he? That was when he had an argument with Pei Xiao, and he accidentally got it. Pei Xiao's gaze fell on the fair and tender hand, without stopping her movements. "No, it's impossible. This is fake, I'm already dead. This must be heaven, it must be fake. Brother, he doesn't want me anymore. Pei Xiao. Get up first." Song Mingzhu was stunned, tears streaming down her face. "Brother, when is it now? Is it 20XX? Pei Xiao reached out to brush off the messy long hair on her head and said, "It's 2007 now, at midnight, it's already very dark outside." Song Mingzhu's eyes were even more incredulous, as she stared blankly at the familiar Pei Xiao in front of her. She didn't die. And it came back to life. Pei Xiao picked up the girl in front of him from the ground, carefully placed her on the hospital bed, and covered her with a blanket. Song Mingzhu had a lot of blood on the back of her hand, and Pei Xiao wiped it clean. She didn't commit suicide, was she buried alive by that old man when she only had one last breath left? Pei Xiao didn't pay much attention to her intense actions, just thinking that she had a nightmare when she fell into a coma. Chapter 2 Rebirth. Brother, don't marry other women. You are listening at novel-full.audio. Song Mingzhu stared blankly at the figure of Pei Xiao leaving, brought in the nurse, and inserted the needle back into her vein. The stimulating pain gradually convinced Song Mingzhu that she had come back to life. God made her live again. So, this time it was in 2007. At this time, she was only in her first year of high school. Wait until the nurse finishes all this and leaves the ward. Pei Xiao, visibly tired, sat by Song Mingzhu's bed, wearing a valuable men's watch on his wrist. He reached out to hold her face and wiped away the tears from the corners of her eyes. Mingzhu, you're only a freshman now. You should study hard instead of focusing all your attention on your brother, do you understand? Song Mingzhu didn't know what to say. She remembered in her past life when she saw news reports that Pei Xiao and Shen Yunyun were getting engaged. Song Mingzhu was heartbroken and committed suicide by cutting her wrist in order to force her to cancel her engagement with the Song family. Yes, this is indeed something that Song Mingzhu can do. Pei Xiao was rescued by his parents from outside. When Pei Xiao was discovered, he was in the wilderness, covered in blood, with only one breath left. Finally, he was taken to the hospital for rescue and saved his life. Not long after Pei Xiao lived with her, his parents had a car accident, and Song Mingzhu became an orphan and was sent to an orphanage. At that time, Song Mingzhu was only 5 years old and could be considered raised by Pei Xiao. Because she relies on Pei Xiao, she doesn't want Pei Xiao to be with other women. She has selfish thoughts about Pei Xiao. From childhood to adulthood, she has always wanted to become the wife of this man, relying on him for paranoid love. But now her love for Pei Xiao has completely disappeared. In her past life, Pei Xiao and Shen Yunyun missed 10 years due to her ruthless intrusion. If it weren't for her selfishness, Shen Yunyun would have married Pei Xiao long ago. She drugged Shen Yunyun out of jealousy towards Pei Xiao's love for her. Let Shen Yunyun lose, Pei Xiao's first child. But Pei Xiao still didn't have time to know, actually they also had a child. Song Mingzhu is afraid. Pei Xiao has never loved her, nor has he ever loved her. Sitting by the bed, she grabbed Pei Xiao's clothes and tearfully said, "Brother. I was wrong. I won't say those things I like and want to be with you again in the future. No matter who my brother is with, I won't do these irrational things anymore. I swear, this is the last time." Song Mingzhu held her long, crow-feathered eyelashes, and her delicate velvet face shimmered with white light, perhaps due to her excessive weakness. Pei Xiao accompanied her for a while, and after watching the little girl on the bed fall asleep, he was called away by a phone call. Pei Xiao took the elevator and arrived at the underground parking lot on the first floor. In the passenger seat of a luxurious Maybach, there is a woman wearing an evening gown, a white plush shawl, and light makeup. Her appearance is not very attractive, but her temperament is dignified and elegant. It can be seen that her identity is not ordinary. "Pearl, is she okay?" Pei Xiao opened the window and lit a cigarette. "It's okay, just rest for a while," he said. The person sitting in the car is Shen Yunyun, the daughter of the Shen group, who is also Pei Xiao's nominal fiancé AE, and also Pei Xiao's childhood sweetheart who grew up together in the past. Shen Yunyun. "Pei Xiao, I think Mingzhu seems to have a special affection for you." Pei Xiao rested his hand on the car window and threw his cigarette butt. "She's still young, she's just not sensible," he said. "A 16-year-old girl who hasn't fully developed, what does she know about love?" Moreover, when Pei Xiao asked her to follow him, it was nothing more than looking at her pitifully and taking her in easily. The Song family had a life-saving kindness towards him, and he could be considered as repaying it. Ultimately, Song Mingzhu cannot compare with Shen Yunyun. "Don't daydream, I'll take you back first." Shen Yunyun's eyes were filled with sorrow. "What about our wedding?" "Pei Xiao, now you're back, you know, I've been waiting for you to say those 3 words to me. The outside world is currently spreading news of our engagement, only we know it's not true, but I really hope it can become true. I've been waiting for you for over a decade. Do you remember that you said you would make me the happiest Mrs. Pei?" Shen Yunyun leaned forward and reached out to hold Pei Xiao's face, letting his deep and serene gaze look at her. She spoke softly, "Pei Xiao, I have never cared about the existence of the pearl, including her feelings for you. After we get married, I will treat her like my sister and take care of her with you, even if she moves into our new house. 13 years have passed, Pei Xiao. I really don't want to wait anymore. Pei Xiao looked at what the woman in front of him said to her, and his eyes became dark and profound. I got it. This is the answer given to her by Pei Xiao. Wake up the next day. Song Mingyue has already hung some drops and the fever has also subsided. She completed the discharge procedures for herself. Just when I went back, my head was still a bit dizzy and heavy. The place where Song Mingzhu lives is in a dilapidated building that has not been demolished. This place is barren, dirty, and chaotic, with many people mixed with fish and dragons, and it is also a neglected area. Song Mingzhu lives here only because the rent here is the cheapest. In fact, Song Mingzhu understands that she is his burden. Without her, Pei Xiao wouldn't have so many concerns not to mention. There will be so many things happening afterwards. Song Mingzhu returned from the hospital without authorization, and she also sent a message to Pei Xiao. I don't know if he has seen it. However, Pei Xiao always looks at his phone when he is busy, and he has never leaked any information about her. Pei Xiao's identity is not simple. He is a wealthy family in the imperial capital and the legitimate eldest son of the Pei family's Pei family group. Song Mingzhu doesn't know when Pei Xiao returned to the Pei family. Pei Xiao did not tell her, but kept placing her here. Song Mingzhu understood clearly in her heart that Pei Xiao was protecting her, and apart from the people trusted by Pei Xiao's side, few knew of her existence. She cannot participate in the struggles of those wealthy and noble families. If her existence is discovered, someone will use her to exploit Pei Xiao. Pei Xiao is very busy every day and rarely comes to her place. Song Mingzhu walked into the room and took a nap. She didn't sleep soundly. Dreaming of everything that happened in a past life, dreaming of a pitch-black basement, she was locked in chains and lived like a beast every day, becoming a toy that the man played with casually. She was afraid, and in this lifetime, she would never dare to disobey Pei Xiao again. If she's good at dealing with Shen Yunyun's mistakes, Pei Xiao wouldn't give her to other men. She will not end up being tortured to death. In this life, she won't be extravagant. When she reaches adulthood and has the ability, she will leave him. Live your own life. Chapter 3. Brother, don't drink so much in the future. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Pei Xiao helped her take a week off at school. Since she left the hospital, Pei Xiao hasn't come for a long time. At 12 o'clock in the morning, Song Mingzhu had just woken up feeling thirsty, so she walked out of the room and poured herself a glass of water with a cup in her hand. I heard the familiar footsteps outside the door and had not yet waited for someone outside to knock. Song Mingzhu looked through her cat's eyes and saw that a drunken person had returned. There was also a man wearing a black suit next to him, Gao Yuan, who was Pei Xiao's assistant. She quickly opened the door. Gao Yuan immediately helped Pei Xiao onto the sofa. Gao Yuan knew about the existence of Song Mingzhu and said, Mr. Pei drank a lot at the banquet. Thank you, Miss Song, for taking care of her. Song Mingzhu has seen him many times, and it can be considered that she has met him. She nodded and said, Excuse me, Assistant Gao. Waiting for Gao Yuan to leave, Song Mingzhu walked to the sofa and helped him take off his coat and shoes. Pei Xiao only comes back to stay with her for a while when he can't stay at Pei's house or when he encounters troubles outside. In the houses of the Pei family that engage in power struggles and intrigues, they are all cannibalistic. The man vaguely opened his gaze and saw the young girl wearing a white, old nightgown, with the hem right at her knees. Her legs were fair, slender, and straight, and the girl's underwear was faintly visible. Song Mingzhu took out the prepared hangover soup from the refrigerator and served him a bowl. She noticed Pei Xiao's gaze, which made her feel a bit uneasy. She carefully took care of the man in front of her, as if there was still fear of Pei Xiao in her eyes from a previous life. The man's deep eyes, with a drunken haze, said, "Hurt, how are you getting better?" Song Mingzhu was startled by his sudden voice and said, "Okay. Almost done. Thank you, brother, for your concern. Why don't I wear the new clothes I bought for you?" Pei Xiao squinted his eyes and let her timidity fall into his eyes. "Since coming out of the hospital, the little girl in front of me seems to be very afraid of him." Song Mingzhu said, "It's still cool on the balcony and hasn't been taken back." Although the house was a bit dilapidated, Pei Xiao had never mistreated her materially. Song Mingzhu walked up to Pei Xiao and sat on a small stool. The girl's nightgown was thin and not yet fully developed. Song Mingzhu held a spoon and fed her abstinence soup to Pei Xiao's cold lips, but her eyes dared not look at him. "Brother, don't drink so much in the future, it's not good for your health." He opened his mouth and drank it down. "This is tomato juice with added sugar, which has a great sobering effect." Pei Xiao's current identity is the president of a company. Drinking alcohol to accompany clients is inevitable, and it is normal to get drunk every time. From memory onwards, Song Mingzhu has been learning to take care of him. Seeing the injured area on the back of Pei Xiao's hand, she asked with concern, "Did your hand get hurt? Did something happen?" Pei Xiao took a deep breath and placed his hand on his eyes. "It's okay to be scratched," he said. It was nothing more than Pei Xiao giving the development project of the South Water Bay area to the Shen family. Mr. Pei was furious, and when he dropped his cup, he was scratched by splashing fragments. His wound is not serious, it should have been a few hours now, but fortunately there is no bleeding. Compared to the injuries that Pei Xiao suffered before, this time, Pei Xiao's injuries are relatively mild. Seeing that he didn't want to say much, Song Mingzhu pursed her lips, slowly got up, and silently walked to the room to take out the medicine box. Subsequently, Pei Xiao felt a soft touch coming from his fingertips. As he opened his eyes, the girl next to him, holding a cotton swab and using iodine to wipe his wound, the man's gaze darkened a bit as he watched her dark and shiny long hair slide off her shoulders, her skin glowing white like a peeled egg, smooth and tender. The girl in front of him had clear and pure eyes, unfamiliar with worldly affairs. Song Mingzhu has not yet grown, and in the future, her appearance will be enough to impress any man. After helping him treat his wound, Song Mingzhu wrapped it with gauze and muttered with concern, "Brother, be careful in the future and don't get hurt again." The man replied, Song Mingzhu shifted her gaze away from his wound and found that Pei Xiao was staring at her. In fact, Song Mingzhu immediately avoided her gaze. She suddenly asked, "Brother, when do you plan to marry Miss Shen?" Pei Xiao suddenly became a little cold and said, "Has she come to see you?" Song Mingzhu shook her head and said, "No, a few days ago when I was watching TV, I saw my brother on TV. Didn't my brother say he wanted to marry Miss Shen? Will my brother invite me to have a wedding banquet when he gets married in the future?" After wrapping the wound with gauze, he tied a beautiful bow on the back of his hand. Pei Xiao's gaze was fixed on her, as if he wanted to see something from her eyes. The girl's eyes were calm, and after returning from the hospital, the girl in front of her changed. Pei Xiao. "Mingzhu, I won't come here often in the future." Song Mingzhu's hand paused for a moment, and then she knew what Pei Xiao was going to say. Because the Pei and Shen families are about to get married, Pei Xiao only needs to go to Shen Yunyun to strengthen his position in the Pei family. In her past life, she insisted on not leaving Pei Xiao. Pei Xiao had no choice but to take her to the Pei family. In her past life, she only found out that the Pei family was a place that ate people without vomiting bones. If it weren't for Pei Xiao's position, which made those malicious people in the Pei family wary, Song Mingzhu might have died long ago. But this time, she should also be about to separate from Pei Xiao. At the end of the day, she is not related to Pei Xiao by blood, and it has always been her persistent obsession with him. Pei Xiao has done enough kindness and righteousness to her. Song Mingzhu nodded and said, I understand, brother. I will take care of myself. During the 3 months when you are not here, haven't I always been well? I am now 16 years old and can cook and wash clothes by myself. I have saved all the living expenses you gave me before, and I can use them until I go to college. Brother, you can rest assured to do your job. Mingzhu will be fine. Pei Xiao reached out to stroke her long hair and said, no matter what happens in the future, you can call your brother. Song Mingzhu smiled and nodded as a gesture. For Pei Xiao, she had already let go in her heart. When Pei Xiao left here, he left a bank card with the password for the day she left the orphanage, which was also her birthday. Pei Xiao really left. When she tried to call Pei Xiao, his original phone became an empty number. Song Mingzhu's statement that she has no emotions and is not sad is false. Because she is an orphan. Apart from Pei Xiao, Song Mingzhu has no relatives around her. Now even Pei Xiao has left, it seems like she will be the only one in the future. But what could that be? Without her intervention this time, Pei Xiao must be able to marry Shen Yunyun soon. Chapter 4. Congratulations, Mrs. Pei, happy wedding. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On the 3rd day of his departure, Song Mingzhu had already adapted and had to return to school life. Song Mingzhu attended high school at number 4 middle school. There are 5 stops to take by bus. Song Mingzhu bought breakfast and boarded the earliest bus. Looking at the familiar and unfamiliar street by the street, she felt like she had come to life again, as if in a dream. I saw on the screens of those high-rise buildings that the news was all about the wealthy Pei family in the imperial capital, intending to marry the daughter of the Shen family, Shen Yunyun. In front of the interview screen, Shen Yunyun, dressed in a dignified and elegant manner, appeared in front of the public holding Pei Xiao's arm and smiled to answer the reporter's question, yes, we are almost engaged. Just next week. Reporter. Congratulations, Mrs. Pei has a happy wedding. Shen Yunyun smiled and said, thank you. The camera gave Shen Yunyun a close dot-up of the ring on her hand, and the woman's face was filled with a happy smile. The man next to him in a leather suit had a restrained and cold temperament, and his deep eyes were piercing with coldness. Pei Xiao is very good looking. It can be said that Song Mingzhu has never seen anyone more beautiful than Pei Xiao. But the woman standing beside him, ignoring Shen Yunyun's appearance, their temperament perfectly matched. In the eyes of outsiders, they are very compatible. Pei Xiao, I won't be your burden this time. I won't disturb your future life either. Reporter. After that, should we change our tone and call her Mrs. Pei? Shen Yunyun was a bit shy and hesitant to answer. Finally, Pei Xiao pulled back to the main topic and talked about the planned economic development of the Pei group in the future. Pei Xiao seems to have a life like this. He is the proud son of heaven, surrounded by his childhood sweetheart, and she is just an outsider who later broke in. Pei Xiao, in this lifetime, I wish you and Shen Yunyun happiness, and a long and happy life. Class 6 of Emperor's 4th Middle School. Song Mingzhu took the bus and returned to the 2nd floor class, which happened to be morning self-study. Song Mingzhu's grades are not bad in the class. I haven't completely fallen behind in my previous life, but I can barely keep up with the math class I had in the morning. Mingzhu, I heard you're on leave. Why did you go? The speaker is her desk mate, Yimin. Song Mingzhu looked at the wound on her wrist. The thread she had removed the day before yesterday is almost healed now. Song Mingzhu casually gave a reason and said, it's nothing, just a fever. That's it. Are you doing much better now? Yimin, by the way, I heard that Zhou Yichuan confessed to you. Is it true or false? Did you agree? Song Mingzhu, who was taking notes, paused in her hand. Zhou Yichuan, how could she possibly forget this name? Pei Xiao's sworn enemy, the future internet tycoon and humble son, started his own business all the way and later owned 10 billion yuan of assets. He is the only person who can equal Pei Xiao. In her previous life, Song Mingzhu knew that Zhou Yichuan liked him, so she relied on his liking and used him to deal with Shen Yunyun, causing a car accident for her. After Pei Xiao learned about this matter, he became angry and pulled Zhou Yichuan, who had no background, off his horse. Zhou Yichuan was imprisoned on charges of intentional injury. The Tianqi technology he founded went bankrupt overnight. The person she was most sorry for in her past life was Zhou Yichuan. Thinking of him, Song Mingzhu's heart felt a thrilling pain. Song Mingzhu suppressed discomfort and said, "My brother, he doesn't want me to fall in love early. He said, I'm still young now, and I just want to focus on my studies." Zhou Yichuan has an ordinary identity and no background. He also has a mother who suffers from uremia and a father who is a doctor. However, people like him work hundreds of times harder than anyone else. He is the god of learning in the eyes of teachers and classmates, and has even been admitted to the Imperial University without having to take the college entrance examination like them. Yi Min said, "Actually, I think Zhou Yichuan is quite good. As I mentioned before, who doesn't have early love now? As long as it doesn't affect your studies, it's good. Maybe Zhou Yichuan can help you with tutoring, and then you can take the same school." Song Mingzhu closed her eyes and didn't know what she was thinking. The day before she cut her wrist to commit suicide for Pei Xiao, she had a heated argument with Zhou Yichuan and even said some insults to him, blaming him for being just a poor kid. Having no future with him will only drag her down. Thinking of those words, Song Mingzhu felt regretful and wished she could slap herself. In his past life, Zhou Yichuan was the best person to her besides Pei Xiao. Yi Min continued, "You always talk about your brother. What exactly does your brother do?" Song Mingzhu said, "I don't know, my brother is very busy. I haven't contacted him for a long time." "Zhou Yichuan, what's wrong with you today? Playing basketball like this?" The voice came from the hallway outside the classroom, talking to Zhou Yichuan's good friend. Song Mingzhu was taken aback when she looked over and saw Zhou Yichuan, who was dressed in a tall, dark skin with strong and handsome features, and wearing a short-sleeved school uniform, passing by the hallway of the school. "Look, it's Zhou Yichuan." Yi Min shook her arm excitedly. "Actually, Zhou Yichuan is also quite handsome, isn't he? It seems like I heard what they said." Coincidentally, Zhou Yichuan's amber-like eyes met Song Mingzhu's four eyes, and compared to the softness in his former gaze, he still looked at her with indifference. Recalling his past life, Zhou Yichuan took on all the charges alone and had to spend the final trial in prison. Song Mingzhu's heart seemed to be pricked. She always owes him a word, "I'm sorry." Seeing her look like a stranger, Zhou Yichuan coldly withdrew his gaze and left. From a distance, only listening, Zhou Yichuan's friend said, "Did you talk to Miss Song? Are you not pursuing her anymore?" Song Mingzhu did not hear Zhou Yichuan's answer. "I don't know what he said either." No one in the entire 4th middle school didn't know that Zhou Yichuan liked her. Even the teacher talked to Zhou Yichuan countless times because of her. Afraid of her early love. She met Zhou Yichuan when she first entered school in her first year of high school. Due to Friday evening self-study, she went back very late and met Zhou Yichuan, who was full of bloodthirsty fighting, in the small alley where she often met. Song Mingzhu easily helped him make an ambulance call the second time. When she was almost bullied by a thug, it was Zhou Yichuan who saved her. The third time was when she came to her aunt and fainted while running. Zhou Yichuan also happened to have physical education class, ignoring the gaze of teachers and students, and carried her into the medical room. As soon as they came and went, they met Song Mingzhu's weakness lies in science, and every time she fails, Zhou Yichuan patiently gives her lectures. The relationship between the two before was so good that it did give outsiders an illusion that they were in a relationship. The courses in the first year of high school are not too tight, but regular students choose not to attend evening self-study. It's time for the end of class. Song Mingzhu was carrying a backpack and leaving school. When she arrived at the bus stop and waited for the bus, suddenly a black sedan stopped in front of her. Chapter 5 Shen Yunyun. You can call me sister.in.law. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When the car window came down and she saw the familiar face inside, the woman in the car smiled at her. Can we talk about it? Song Mingzhu nodded and opened the rear passenger door, and she got into the car. Shen Yunyun looked at her with gentle eyes and said, You are the little girl who has been following Pei Xiao all along. I remember your name is Mingzhu, right? She seemed to sense Song Mingzhu's nervousness, and Shen Yunyun's delicate and fair hand grasped her. Don't be nervous, you can call me Yunyun sister, or you can call me sister.in.law, she said. I have only seen your photos, I didn't expect you to look so beautiful. When you grow up, you will definitely be very beautiful. Song Mingzhu felt inferior in front of Shen Yunyun, and she softly shouted, Sister-in-law. This title clearly satisfied Shen Yunyun, with a beautiful curve at the corner of her mouth. Is there a lot of homework today? Not much. Is sister.in.law looking for me for anything? Shen Yunyun said, I've been wanting to have dinner with you for a long time. I thought I happened to pass by, so I came to see you on the way. Your brother is still busy with company matters and will come later. Now let's go take our order first. Song Mingzhu remained silent and didn't speak. Shen Yunyun was not unaware because she had committed suicide in her marriage to Pei Xiao. Now that Shen Yunyun is looking for her again, it is obvious that Pei Xiao doesn't know. Are you looking for her now to test her? Test whether her feelings for Pei Xiao exceed those of her siblings. After driving for over half an hour. Arriving at Xiangxiangju, a Chinese-style restaurant. The catering manager immediately greeted the person with a smile and said, Miss Shen, welcome. The private room you reserved is ready, and I will take you there. Entering the spacious private room, Shen Yunyun sat dignified and elegant in her seat, while Song Mingzhu sat next to her. The catering manager personally received and brought out a menu. Shen Yunyun held the menu and handed it to Song Mingzhu. Mingzhu, let's see what she likes to eat. Song Mingzhu looked at any dish on the menu and started with 3 digits. Song Mingzhu can't afford any of these dishes now. She nervously grabbed the hem of her school uniform and said, Sister-in-law, I can do anything. Shen Yunyun noticed her impatience and said with a smile, Then let's follow your brother's taste. He, like you, likes to eat light food. Pei Group. Gao Yuan received a call from Xiangju restaurant. When Pei Xiao walked out of the conference room, he reported, President, Miss Shen has taken Miss Mingzhu to Xiangju. I just called to ask, how long do you have to arrive? Pei Xiao, dressed in a black suit and standing tall, took a bag with one hand and walked into the CEO's office. The man frowned and said, Who wants her to find the pearl? Gao Yuan shook his head and said, It should be Miss Shen who happened to meet Miss Mingzhu on the way. Pei Xiao said, Push aside the upcoming socializing and drive to Xiangxiang residence. Gao Yuan nodded and said, It's the CEO. He made it clear that no one was allowed to disturb her. Shen Yunyun has always regarded her existence as a threat. This time, Shen Yunyun is just announcing sovereignty in front of her and implying to tell her. She and Pei Xiao are people from 2 different worlds. The wealth gap between them, as well as their age, Pei Xiao will be 30 in 2 years, and it will be 2 years later that Song Mingzhu is only 18 years old. Her life is still just beginning. Song Mingzhu was drinking a drink, while Shen Yunyun was taking great care of her and helping her order many desserts that even 15 or 16-year-old girls like to eat. When Pei Xiao arrived, it was already 7 o'clock in the evening. The dishes were also served one after another. Upon hearing the footsteps outside the private room, Song Mingzhu felt nervous and grabbed the hem of her clothes tightly. Next second, the door of the private room was pushed open. Faced with the deep gaze of the falcon, Song Mingzhu looked away without any fear. Shen Yunyun walked up to the door of the private room and held Pei Xiao's arm. Why are you only here now? Mingzhu and I have been waiting for you for a long time. The air conditioning was on in the private room, and Shen Yunyun looked like a virtuous wife and mother, helping him take off his coat and hang it on a nearby hanger. The interaction between the two was like a loving couple who had been together for many years. The man only had 2 buttons on the collar of a black shirt that were not buttoned up, and there were vigorous and powerful muscles under the clothes. Pei Xiao had a very good figure, appearing thin when dressed, with flesh when undressed, and a hanger that looked good on everything. He could even instantly kill all international male models. Coupled with Pei Xiao's face, there was no woman who was not attracted to him, let alone, he was also the president of Pei Xiao Group. Shen Yunyun sat in the middle and brought a pair of bowls and chopsticks for Pei Xiao. I brought the pearl over without authorization, you won't be angry, will you? Pei Xiao spoke in a low voice, no, I don't. I went to the hospital for a check-up today and what were the results? Shen Yunyun smiled and said, don't worry, the doctor said it's okay. I plan to prepare for pregnancy during this period, and you also need to come with me, so I won't give you any alcohol. Preparation for pregnancy. Song Mingzhu suddenly knocked over her drink and stood up immediately. Shen Yunyun quickly took out a few pieces of paper and went to wipe Song Mingzhu's clothes. Why are you so careless? I'll take you to the restroom to wash it, she said. Song Mingzhu quickly said, no need, it's okay with me. The school uniform also needs to be washed tomorrow. Shen Yunyun said with concern, if you feel uncomfortable wearing it, just say it. It's just right in the car, and I've prepared a set of clothes. It's okay, don't bother, sister. Law. Song Mingzhu shook her head. Song Mingzhu ignored the hot and icy gaze of Pei Xiao as she looked at her. When she sat back in her seat, she continued to quietly eat the food brought by Shen Yunyun. Eat more, if you can't finish it, you can pack it back for dinner, she said. Is there enough living expenses? Pei Xiao suddenly said. Song Mingzhu lowered her eyes and nodded, enough. After speaking, Pei Xiao took out a black wallet clip from his pocket and took out a card from inside. This card, you can swipe whatever you want to buy. Don't eat anything overnight, your stomach is not good, he said. He still remembered that Song Mingzhu used to struggle with food from time to time in the orphanage, mostly staying hungry for a long time. Over time, she suffered from stomach problems. Unable to eat anything too cold, she had a stomachache as soon as she ate the dishes overnight. Once, she ate tomato and eggs left in the refrigerator overnight. At night, I vomit and have diarrhea, and my stomach bleeds. Pei Xiao took her to the hospital overnight and took care of her all night. Song Mingzhu immediately waved her hand and said, brother, I haven't used up the living expenses you gave me before, so I can't collect them anymore. Shen Yunyun winced, took the card, smiled, and put it into her hand. Pei Xiao asked you to take it. This is his intention to be a brother. Your brother now has money, so don't save it for him. If it is not enough, you can also ask his sister. Law for it. Shen Yunyun helped her put it in her backpack, but Song Mingzhu had no choice, as if the money was meant to be used as a charity for her. By the way, in a few months, your brother and I will be getting engaged. This is an invitation, and then Mingzhu must come. Chapter 6. Still angry with brother. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The red gilded calligraphy deeply hurt Song Mingzhu's eyes. Afterwards, Song Mingzhu kept eating quietly and didn't speak anymore. She was listening to Shen Yunyun and Pei Xiao talking about family matters and things to prepare for the wedding. Song Mingzhu stood quietly on the side, like an outsider, unable to get in touch with what they were saying. Having eaten almost everything, Shen Yunyun went to the restroom and Pei Xiao followed along. In the vast private room, only Song Mingzhu remained alone. The night outside the window has completely darkened. Looking at the time, it's already past 8 o'clock. No matter how late she is, she will miss the last bus. Song Mingzhu waited for a few minutes, but they haven't returned yet. She didn't want to wait any longer, stood up, took out the bank card given by Pei Xiao from her backpack, and placed it in Pei Xiao's position, leaving behind the red invitation. When leaving with his backpack on his back, he instructed the waiter, "If my brother comes back later, could you please tell him? I'll go back first." Waiter. Mr. Pei and Miss Song have gone to the next private room to discuss matters. Why don't you wait a little longer? Song Mingzhu grabbed her backpack strap and shook her head, saying, "No need, I still have class tomorrow." Actually, she's a bit tired. If we continue to wait, we will also see the scene of Pei Xiao and Shen Yunyun's love, which is not very attractive. She could feel that Pei Xiao was already unhappy coming here with Shen Yunyun. Song Mingzhu left Xiangxiang residence and walked for a while, just in time to catch the last bus. She should get used to living alone. Song Mingzhu got off the bus, passed through the dark alleyway, and then went up to a dilapidated building. The induction light in the hallway was already broken, and Song Mingzhu felt the darkness, barely able to open the door. Upon returning home, she locked the door behind her back, walked into the room, put down her backpack, and then went to the bathroom to take a shower. The changed school uniform is soaked in laundry detergent in a basin of water. It was almost 10:30 when Song Mingzhu finished her English copying homework. As she was about to put away her textbook, she suddenly found a notebook in her backpack that didn't belong to her. Song Mingzhu took out a brand new notebook from her backpack and opened a page, which read Zhou Yichuan's name. She caressed the name above, and his font was very neat, in standard regular script. Among the few men she knew, except for Pei Xiao, only Zhou Yichuan's handwriting was the most beautiful. Turning to the next page, there were mathematical and physical formulas drawn for him by Zhou Yichuan. Last time Zhou Yichuan stuffed it into her backpack, Song Mingzhu forgot to return it to him. Just then, she heard a knocking outside the door. "I don't know who it is so late." Upon hearing the knocking on the door, Song Mingzhu walked out and opened it, revealing through her cat's eyes that it was actually Pei Xiao. "What is he doing here?" Song Mingzhu opened the door and smelled a strong smell of alcohol rushing towards her face. "Brother! Why did you come?" "I can't come." Song Mingzhu tightly shook her hand and said, "No." She moved away and let Pei Xiao in. "It's so late, why don't you sleep?" Pei Xiao walked in from outside. Song Mingzhu closed the door, locked the door, and the passing breeze smelled a faint smell of smoke and alcohol on him, as if he had just returned from a social gathering. The smell was strong, mixed with his unique cold breath. The smell was very pleasant, but even though Song Mingzhu was behind him, she didn't dare to take a second look at his back. Did he drink alcohol? Aren't we going to get married to Shen Yunyun and prepare for pregnancy? I just finished my homework, Song Mingzhu replied softly, her gaze fixed on the heels of his leather shoes. As she restrained her gaze, she rarely feels uncomfortable alone with Pei Xiao. This is the first time. "Brother, I'll go get you some sobering up soup. There was still some left in the fridge I made last time, but there was only one bowl left." Song Mingzhu walked out of the kitchen and didn't notice Pei Xiao in the living room. She walked into her room carrying sobering soup and found Pei Xiao standing in front of the desk, holding the notebook in her hand. A cold breath emanated from him, and she didn't know if she was overthinking it. He felt as if Pei Xiao was angry. The man's cold voice fell, "Who is Zhou Yichuan?" With a less severe reprimand, Song Mingzhu's body trembled with fear. She explained, "He is my classmate, and I borrowed this note from him." "Brother! Don't misunderstand, I have nothing with him." Upon hearing the frightened and anxious expression of the little girl, Pei Xiao's eyes narrowed with a cold and fierce light, and his face softened a bit. He put down his notebook and walked up to her, standing in front of her with an elder-like posture. His eagle-like eyes were fixed on her, Pearl. "Brother, you're not scolding anything, you're still young. My brother also said, your focus now is on studying, not wasting time on someone unrelated. Do you understand?" The man's voice was very pleasant, word by word. Although the little girl in front of him spoke very gently, Song Mingzhu still dared not look up at her. Song Mingzhu clasped her hands in front and nodded, I understand, brother. I won't cause any trouble for him. The last time Zhou Yichuan pursued her, it caused a stir in the school and almost invited parents. Song Mingzhu's parents had already died in a car accident, and she only had a relative like Pei Xiao by her side. When she entered school, she also filled in Pei Xiao's phone number. Song Mingzhu is most afraid of teachers calling their parents. If it weren't for Zhou Yichuan's intervention to intercede for her, if Pei Xiao had rushed to school and knew what had happened, Pei Xiao's temper would not have spared Zhou Yichuan. In the future, I will focus all my attention on studying and won't let my brother down. Due to the girl's fear, her tone of voice was very weak. Pei Xiao's gaze fell on her hand holding the hangover candy. He took it and placed it aside, then grabbed his hand. Song Mingzhu stiffened her body, wanting to release her hand, but ultimately gave up. Pei Xiao. Did you apply the medicine? I've taken the medicine. Song Mingzhu still took her hand back from his hand, brother, it's getting late. You should go back early. I'm a bit tired, and I still have classes tomorrow. Pei Xiao withdrew his hand and said, are you still angry with your brother? I don't have it, Song Mingzhu shook her head. Pei Xiao took a step forward and approached her. Song Mingzhu lowered her head, only about 1 centimeter away from him, and could lean against his chest. The man's cold and questioning tone came from above, no. Why hasn't Mingzhu been looking at her brother since coming in from outside? Instead, she keeps you hiding. Are you afraid to see your brother, or is it that Mingzhu doesn't even want to see him? Song Mingzhu. Chapter 7, I never thought of disturbing you. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Pei Xiao approached with an aggressive aura, and Song Mingzhu was enveloped by a powerful aura. She unconsciously took a step back and said, I didn't. Lift your head up. Song Mingzhu nervously grabbed both sides of her clothes, listened to his words, and slowly lifted her head, but her clear eyes betrayed her, filled with fear of men. Pei Xiao looked at the black hair hanging on the pretty tip of the girl's nose. He reached out and flicked it away. Mingzhu, you know my brother doesn't like to hear you lie. To be honest. His tone was stern. Song Mingzhu said in a casual tone. Because you will soon have your own family, and my brother only brought me with him because of his life-saving kindness. But we have no blood relationship, so I should keep a distance from you. Brother. You have been good enough to me over the years. I just don't want to owe you anything anymore. I used to be ignorant and did many extreme things. Last time I was in the hospital, I already figured it out. My brother has never been an ordinary person. You have your own life, and I will always grow up and leave you. Actually, my brother doesn't need to worry about me from now on. I can already support myself. Today's incident was my fault. I shouldn't have been with Shen Yunyun without saying hello to my brother. Brother, I didn't take the initiative to find her. I didn't even bother you. Before her rebirth, Song Mingzhu was never afraid of Pei Xiao, and even relied on his favor to act recklessly by his side. Whatever others dared not do to him, Song Mingzhu dared to do. She can instruct Pei Xiao to help her pour water, wash clothes, and dry clothes. Let him cook for her, but now it's not possible. Since returning to the Pei family in the imperial capital, Pei Xiao has been the heir of the Pei family's prosperous group. Last time. Pei Xiao also said that in the future he may not come to him again. Song Mingzhu has been a very sensitive person since childhood. Thinking of everything in her past life, Song Mingzhu began to fear Pei Xiao and dared not disobey him with a single word. Pei Xiaoxing's deep gaze fixed tightly on her, his face cold and clear. Who are you, teaching you these words? Song Mingzhu answered truthfully, no one said anything to me, these are all things I understand to the end. We are not siblings, let alone shedding the same blood. Dad saved you, and my brother's gratitude has been repaid enough. Pei Xiao narrowed his dangerous eyes and said, it's good that Mingzhu is sensible now, but you can't say this in the future, understand? Speak up. Song Mingzhu felt Pei Xiao's anger and immediately nodded in response, I know, brother. But she didn't understand why he was angry. She has always been a burden by his side, isn't it just right for her to leave him? Pei Xiao happened to be doing his own thing, so there was no need to worry about her feelings anymore. Pei Xiao was satisfied and no longer frowned. He picked up the hangover soup placed aside, took it out, and walked outside the door. He immediately picked up his bowl and drank it all. He looked at her sideways, and the cold light in his eyes did not disappear. No matter who it is, you are not allowed to have any contact with the opposite sex. Read your book carefully. Song Mingzhu stood still, she was indeed scared today. Her tense body waited until the sound of Pei Xiao closing the door and leaving disappeared, before she dared to relax. After Pei Xiao left the dangerous building, he got into a valuable Maybach and the door of the rear passenger seat closed. The man's cold command fell, check the information about Zhou Yichuan. Gao Yuan. It's the CEO. Pei Xiao had just finished socializing when he came here. Perhaps due to an alcohol attack and discomfort in his stomach, the man closed his eyes and leaned against the car seat to rest. Who has seen her lately, he said. Gao Yuan said, only Miss Shen, Miss Mingzhu, has been attending school on time recently and there is nothing wrong with her. There's nothing wrong with it. Since she started committing suicide, the girl's gaze at him has noticeably increased in fear. Before, she didn't dare to do anything to him. She really understands. But what Pei Xiao prefers to see is the girl from the past. Pei Xiao has always been meticulous in his thinking, noticing that Song Mingzhu was clearly wrong, but he doesn't know exactly what's wrong. Junlin Mansion. Pei Xiao lifted his tired body, took off his black suit jacket, walked up the stairs, and returned to the second-floor room. He pushed open the door, and there was a sweet and greasy smell floating in the room, which was not very pleasant. Upon hearing the sound of the room opening, Shen Yunyun supported the drowsy woman with her head in her hand, trembling her eyes. She immediately woke up, stood up from her chair, turned around, and looked at the man at the door with a gentle smile on her lips. Are you back? In addition, women's clothing also carries a seductive charm. Shen Yunyun was wearing a white lace camisole nightgown, seemingly without an inner garment. The soft fabric was tightly attached to the woman's body, outlining all her seductive curves. Under the illumination of the light, the white fabric was somewhat transparent, and she could easily see the body that had captivated countless men. Shen Yunyun's figure has been strictly managed, and she has put in a lot of effort to maintain a perfect figure, just to win the favor of the man in front of her. The Shen family is also considered a wealthy family in the imperial capital, with strict family rules. Since childhood, Shen Yunyun has been constrained by family rules and appears in a man's room at night. It is indeed a bad family tradition, but no matter what, she is the future hostess of this family. Shen Yunyun also did such a bold thing for the first time, with a shy blush on her face. She walked forward and grabbed the man's arm, saying, Pei Xiao, don't be angry, okay? I know what happened today, it was indeed that I did something too abrupt and wrong. I shouldn't go to find Song Mingzhu without telling you. I didn't just want to surprise you out of kindness. She's your sister, and I thought it's been a long time since I last saw your siblings, so I wanted to take her for a meal. I really didn't think much about anything. Don't be angry, okay? Speaking boldly, Shen Yunyun stood in front of Pei Xiao, her hands wrapped around his neck, and she bit her lips shyly. I'm here to apologize for you, isn't it? I'll promise you not to look for the pearl privately in the future. Pei Xiao quietly stared at every move of the woman, but he had no physical desire belonging to men for such a sexy woman. Yunyun, it's already late now, don't make a fuss. Shen Yunyun quickly hugged Pei Xiao's waist and leaned against his chest, feeling aggrieved. You are already my unmarried, and you haven't been with me well since your engagement, she said. Pei Xiao, I am your woman. Speaking boldly, Shen Yunyun grabbed Pei Xiao's hand and placed it on the soft part of her chest. Don't you want me? Pei Xiao, I really love you. The seductive eyes of the woman stared at him, tiptoeing slowly towards him. Chapter 8. Song Mingzhu, are you crazy? You are listening at novel-full.audio. Just a few centimeters away, Pei Xiao suddenly pushed her away and said, Yunyun, pay attention to propriety and don't do anything to reduce the price. I'll have the driver take you back. After finishing speaking, Pei Xiao hung her aside, threw her suit jacket on the bed, opened the window, took out a pack of men's cigarettes from his pocket, and threw them into his mouth. The metal lighter ignited them. The man's coldness made her feel frustrated. Shen Yunyun looked at him with a lonely expression and said, Pei Xiao, I'm already like this. Don't you still understand what I mean? All of this was voluntarily done by me. Besides, I'm your fiancé AE, shouldn't I do all these things? Pei Xiao nodded at the banquet in his hand, staring at her without any lustful waves in his eyes, as if even if Shen Yunyun took off her clothes and stood in front of him, there would be no desire at all. Yunyun. There are some things that can be done, but not now, I don't have the mood to do these things. Put on your clothes and if you don't want to leave, let the servant arrange a room for you. Pei Xiao. Why didn't you touch me on earth? Shen Yunyun watched the man walk towards the study without looking back. As soon as the door of the study closed, Shen Yunyun's eyes could no longer conceal her injuries, and tears welled up in her eyes. Night. Song Mingzhu didn't sleep too peacefully tonight, her expression painful as she said in her dream, No, don't come over. Ah. Song Mingzhu sat up suddenly, her forehead already wet with cold sweat, her hair sticking to her cheeks, and she gasped for breath. She looked at the dim room, the howling wind outside, and the sound seemed like it was going to rain. The room was a bit hot, but fortunately, all of this was just a dream. She quickly sat up and closed the window. For so many days, she had been having the same kind of dream every time, tormented by a man's unbearable fate, and then buried in the dirty and smelly garbage pit. The suffocating feeling made her very uncomfortable. Song Mingzhu walked to the kitchen with a dry mouth and took a big sip of water. It was not until soon that the beating rhythm of the heart slowed down. Looking at the time, it's only around 3 a.m. Tomorrow there is still class, and Song Mingzhu lay down again with the light on and slept for a while. In a daze, when she heard the alarm clock ring at 5:30, Song Mingzhu felt dizzy and walked to the restroom to freshen up. After rubbing around for 15 minutes, she walked out the door. Song Mingzhu was wearing a newly changed school uniform and carrying a backpack, running all the way to the bus stop. Fortunately, she was only a few seconds away and almost missed the bus. Early in the morning, there were not many people on the bus. Song Mingzhu was accustomed to sitting in the position near the back door, where she could enter and see the scenery outside the window. When she arrived at the next stop, for some reason today, a group of old ladies suddenly rushed in. Seeing this, Song Mingzhu quickly stood up and gave up her seat. But after 3 stops, the entire carriage was immediately packed with people. Driver. Walk inside. Song Mingzhu stood in the back car door and was suddenly squeezed into a corner. She tightly held her backpack, and as the car turned rapidly, she didn't have time to grab onto the railing. She pushed herself backwards with all her might, instead of falling as she had imagined. Instead, she forcefully hit a hard chest and a familiar aura. Zhou Yichuan. Song Mingzhu held her breath, and in that moment, her heart was pounding abnormally. Zhou Yichuan was wearing a black school uniform, with other school badges on his chest, rolled up his sleeves, and carried a shoulder bag. His hand was propped up on the upright armrest beside him, and he was nearly 1.8 meters tall. The young man's resolute gaze was fixed on the scenery outside the bus. The girl has a petite and slender figure, tied in a long ponytail. From a distance, it seems as if she is being protected by the boy behind her with a strong sense of security. Her outstretched arms isolate all irrelevant people, leaving the girl with a small space of freedom alone. The bus was shaking and there was nowhere to support Song Mingzhu. She could only grab the pole that Zhou Yichuan was holding, and the two of them passed by with their backs slightly touching each other from time to time. Song Mingzhu lowered her head, with a faint curve unconsciously rising at the corner of her mouth. The familiar yet floral scent of laundry detergent made her feel at ease. Because Zhou Yichuan was the only person who, in her past life, could unconditionally stand by her side no matter how bad she was. In her past life, she was extremely wicked, but she was also the only one who said to her, "No matter what you become, you are my pearl in the palm." In a previous life, when Zhou Yichuan became a billionaire internet company boss, he once spent billions of dollars just to celebrate her birthday. Even Pei Xiao has never done this for her before. Song Mingzhu recalled everything from before. Unconsciously, the car had already arrived at the school gate. She was stunned for a moment before getting off the bus. She walked slowly, but the people behind her did not surpass her, as if she had been following her all along. As she was about to reach the school gate, Song Mingzhu stopped and said, "Zhou Yichuan." She mustered up her courage and called out his name. When she looked behind him, Zhou Yichuan remained expressionless and walked past him, treating her as non-existent air. He walks very fast, it's not like she can keep up with him in just a few steps. When Song Mingzhu walked into the school gate, Zhou Yichuan was already wearing a red armband as a duty student, standing at the school gate to check the people carrying school badges. Zhou Yichuan has no impulse to talk to her now. It seems that it's because what she said last time was too much. Song Mingzhu lowered her head somewhat desolate and walked into the school. During her time at school, Song Mingzhu spent the whole day trying to find a chance to say sorry to Zhou Yichuan alone. She didn't find the opportunity smoothly several times. The morning ended in a daze, and in the afternoon. Song Mingzhu was sitting in the back seat during an exam, watching Zhou Yichuan's physical education class and playing basketball on the playground. This class is an in-class test, a 25-minute half-paper, designed to test the foundation of mathematical knowledge. Song Mingzhu's desk mate gently reminded her, "Mingzhu, what are you looking at? If you don't hurry up and write the exam, you'll have to submit it in a while." Song Mingzhu quickly reacted, but found that there was a blank space on the test paper and nothing was written. She quickly regained her composure while writing her own name. Suddenly, but it was written as Zhou Yichuan. Yimin noticed and looked at her with stunned eyes. "Song Mingzhu, are you crazy? Do you know whose class this is? Why did you write it as Zhou Yichuan's name?" Song Mingzhu scrambled and tore off the name on it with tape, but the ink on the ballpoint pen couldn't stick off no matter how hard it stuck. Song Mingzhu could only blacken her name and quickly used the remaining time to do the exercises. Before she could finish writing, the first 3 questions had already begun to be submitted. When the test paper was collected, Song Mingzhu's mind was filled with only 3 words: "I'm done." Chapter 9. Zhou Yichuan. What kind of self-criticism letter? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chang Qiuping is a well-known and unfeeling old witch in the ordinary humanities class. She is also a relative of the education director of the 4th middle school. Song Mingzhu and others collected the test papers in the first row, and she almost didn't poke a big hole in the name column. At the moment when the test paper was collected, Song Mingzhu cautiously asked the people around her, "The name written on it can't be seen, right?" Yimin swallowed her saliva and said, "You should seek more blessings for yourself." In the next few classes, Song Mingzhu was all restless. Previously, due to suspicion, she was called to the moral education department to criticize her early romance with Zhou Yichuan. Time passed quickly in a daze, and in the last class of moral education, Song Mingzhu was called into the office alone and severely scolded. It's class time now, and Song Mingzhu should be grateful that there aren't many teachers in the office. The deafening sound was the sound of the test paper being slapped on the table. Song Mingzhu lowered her head and looked at her toes as she shrank her shoulders, hesitant to speak. Song Mingzhu, are you here to study or to fall in love? Do you know that if your current grades continue to decline, you will be at the bottom of the class? How old are you? Your mind is full of thoughts about dating. Do you still have any sense of shame? Chang Qiuping pushed the glasses hanging on the bridge of her nose, her face full of anger. Look at the name on it yourself, think I can't see it if it's blacked out. Song Mingzhu bit her lip lightly and dared not speak. Call your parents over tomorrow. When it comes to calling parents, Song Mingzhu lowered her head again and said, Teacher, my brother has already gone home and he hasn't contacted me for a long time. The last time he contacted me was more than 3 months ago, and he was about to get engaged. I don't want to disturb him. Teacher Chang, I'm really sorry. Song Mingzhu bowed her body and said at a standard 90-degree angle, I have caused trouble for our class. Please give me one last chance. I promise this will never happen again, and I will work hard to study in the future. When Chang Qiuping saw the little girl in front of her, her angry expression softened a bit, but more sympathy. Only she knew about Song Mingzhu's situation. When she was a child, her parents had a car accident and grew up in an orphanage. She followed an older brother who had no blood relationship, who probably also returned home and threw her away as a burden, ignoring her. As a teacher, she is not a person with a heart of stone. Chang Qiuping said, Don't tell me that. Last time, that's how you promised me, and then you can take a look at the current situation. What should I do with you? You are only 15 or 16 years old now. If you are expelled from school, what can you do to enter society? Song Mingzhu said anxiously, Teacher, I can write a guarantee letter for you. With my academic proof, I guarantee that I will definitely improve in the top 10 in this mock exam. Chang Qiuping saw the little girl with tears streaming down her face, so she reached out and drew a piece of paper for her. First, wipe your tears off, and then write a guarantee letter. If you can't do it, report it to the education department and give you a punishment. You already had a probation punishment before, and if you take another punishment, the school will definitely dismiss you, you know. Song Mingzhu nodded with tears in her eyes and said, Thank you, teacher. I understand. Compared to tears that can win sympathy, it's better to call him Pei Xiao. If he were to cause a sensation in the school, Song Mingzhu's biggest fear would be that her actions would implicate Zhou Yichuan. Song Mingzhu walked out of the office and managed to escape a disaster. Wait for her to return to the classroom. Yimin quietly leaned over and asked her, Old witch, did you punish you? Song Mingzhu nodded and said, It's nothing, just that I wrote a self-reflection letter. Yimin nodded and said, That's okay. You should be careful in the future. If you leave, I won't have a sweet and soft desk mate like you. You don't know how many people envy me. The last self-study class was over, and today happened to be her turn again. She was on duty, and another person took sick leave. Only Song Mingzhu was cleaning the classroom and cleaning the blackboard. There wasn't much homework assigned today. Song Mingzhu stood on a stool with a bucket in hand, wiping the blackboard with a damp towel. However, she didn't know that a person quietly appeared outside the door, holding her chest with both hands and leaning against the door. She watched with determination as the girl standing on the stool struggled to wipe the blackboard. Cough. The robust young man, like a rough man, half clenched his fist and coughed a few times on his lips. Song Mingzhu looked sideways with a surprised expression and said, You. Why did you come? Zhou Yichuan is very tall, even if the little girl stands on a low stool with a cloth in her hand, she can barely keep up with the boy's gaze. Are you on duty today? Zhou Yichuan took the cloth from her hand and lifted his sleeve, revealing his wheat-colored skin. His small arms, vigorous and powerful meridians, extended all the way to his beautiful and slender fingers. The crisscrossed veins looked at the hands washing the cloth in the bucket, which was very pleasing to the eye. Squeeze the water dry, fold it well, and with a casual stretch of his hand, he can hook onto the edge position that Song Mingzhu cannot wipe. Song Mingzhu nodded, with all the emotions in her eyes. She stared at his profile with complexity and said, aren't you ignoring me? Zhou Yichuan wiped the blackboard with his hand, paused for a moment, and then he finished wiping the entire blackboard. He picked up a broom and helped her clean the entire classroom, as well as mopping the floor. He has completed all the tasks that Song Mingzhu, the on-duty student, should do. The afterglow of the sunset shone down, and his shadow was stretched long. Song Mingzhu's gaze followed his figure, and seeing him again this time seemed like a dream. Even though Zhou Yichuan was the president of an internet company in his previous life, he would still cook for her. Even if she was picky enough, he would never be impatient and would give her the best things in the world. The jewelry that Pei Xiao gave to Shen Yunyun has never been left behind by Zhou Yichuan, and she is more valuable than what Shen Yunyun received. At first, she didn't know why she didn't want to leave such a good Zhou Yichuan behind. But to choose a man who never loves him. Hello, Zhou Yichuan. Song Mingzhu got off the chair and suddenly saw the homeroom teacher approaching not far away. Without saying a word, she quickly grabbed Zhou Yichuan and hid behind the classroom door. Don't make a sound, my homeroom teacher is here. Chang Qiuping glanced at the classroom and said, are you the only one on duty today? Song Mingzhu stood at the door and nodded, yes, teacher. Chang Qiuping looked at her abnormal expression and didn't think much about it. Then she pointed to the ground outside and said, remember to drag it outside too, and don't forget, the 800-word review letter. Song Mingzhu, I see, teacher Chang. Song Mingzhu only breathed a sigh of relief when the person left. Zhou Yichuan. What kind of self-criticism letter? After Chapter 10, there is no need to report on these matters again. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Song Mingzhu ignored him, just holding his mop and walking outside, dragging the last piece of land. Aren't you ignoring me? It's better not to talk to me when you graduate. Song Mingzhu walked from the back door to the hygiene corner, cleaned everything up, and then picked up her backpack as she was about to leave. Zhou Yichuan suddenly grabbed her hand and blocked her behind the corner of the classroom wall. Song Mingzhu looked at his eyebrows and eyes. Although he was only 18 years old, he had a very mature face. Now he looked just ordinary, and only Song Mingzhu knew how much Zhou Yichuan, who was in his 30s and 40s, was highly sought after by women. There were countless mayors and international female model stars. He belongs to a man who becomes more and more flavorful as he gets older. The light in his eyes is still the same as in his past life, gentle with determination. Zhou Yichuan, so what do you think of me? I am a poor person who is nothing but good academic performance. When I approach you like garbage, it makes you feel nauseous. You shouldn't be happy if I stay away from you. No. Song Mingzhu suddenly grabbed his wrist anxiously. Zhou Yichuan, I'm sorry about last time. These are all my angry words, I've never thought of them like this before. Zhou Yichuan, I'm sorry. Thinking of his past life and causing him to be imprisoned, Zhou Yichuan, who was stopped for her and ultimately sentenced to life imprisonment, shed tears for some reason. I'm sorry for you. Zhou Yichuan. I'm really sorry. The surging tears of the girl made the calm person feel a hint of panic and urgency in their heart. What are you crying for? When someone sees me, they will think I have done something to you. Don't cry, I promise. In the future, I won't ignore you. Zhou Yichuan said calmly with his eyes closed. Someone saw you being called to the office, did my presence cause you trouble? Song Mingzhu wiped her tears on the back of her hand and choked up in her voice, saying, No, it's none of your business. It was my poor grades this time that led me to be called to the office. Zhou Yichuan furrowed his brows and said, "Where's the exam paper? Show me it." Song Mingzhu showed him the exam paper, and Zhou Yichuan was so clever that he could definitely tell at a glance that his name was written on it. She hesitated and said, "The paper hasn't been graded yet, we have to wait until tomorrow." Zhou Yichuan. "Did I remember all the notebooks I gave you last time?" Song Mingzhu shook her head, "Not yet." Zhou Yichuan lowered his head and looked at the petite girl in front of him, with a suppressed emotion in his eyes. "Your foundation is not bad, and the pressure in the humanities class is not very high. You still have 2 years left, so you can take it slow and not worry. As long as you remember everything I gave you, you can get into a good university. I'll leave first, and you should also go back. Remember what I said, if there's anything you don't understand, give me a call." As he turned around, Song Mingzhu suddenly grabbed his hand and touched his wheat-colored skin, as well as his calm and majestic eyes. She felt that the 4 words, Iron Man tenderness, were particularly appropriate to him. "Zhou Yichuan, I'm sorry for what happened last time. I won't say these words again in the future. Can you forgive me?" "Zhou Yichuan, I got it." Song Mingzhu. Zhou Yichuan's gaze fell on his wrist, which was still tightly grasped. "How long do you want to catch me? Do you want to take disciplinary action if you're caught?" Song Mingzhu immediately let go of her hand and looked at the figure of him leaving. At this moment, her heart seemed to slowly let go of something, no longer as heavy as before. "Zhou Yichuan, this time. I won't implicate you again." Xingshi group. At the end of the meeting, Gao Yuan pushed open the door of the conference room, dressed in a black high-end expensive suit and carrying a handbag with one hand. With a strong aura, Gao Yuan walked out of the conference room and followed closely behind, reporting on his next itinerary. Tomorrow is Friday, according to the old rules of the Xing family, it is the Xing family banquet. Pei Xiao pushed all the social events and walked into the CEO's office. "Did you find the information you asked to check?" Gao Yuan nodded and said, "We have found out that Zhou Yichuan was originally from Qingcheng. Later, due to his mother's uremia, he moved to the imperial city. The family only managed a traditional Chinese medicine clinic with his father, and the income was meager. In addition, there was a huge monthly medical expense. Currently, Zhou Yichuan's biggest source of income is the scholarship he was specially recruited to enter the Imperial University. In addition, Zhou Yichuan mostly works part-time after school every day and does tutoring on weekends to get paid. Miss Mingzhu and I just got to know each other at the beginning of school. A little over a week ago, the two of them had just had an argument." Pei Xiao's deep and dangerous eyes were filled with indifference, and there was not much emotion on his face. He sat at his desk, picked up a nearby document, read it, and then signed it. After listening to these reports, the man just let out a light sentence, "There's no need to report these things again in the future. Every week, I transfer a living allowance to her card, including the next 2 years of high school tuition. Is this the plan to no longer care about Miss Mingzhu?" Gao Yuan pondered, but it was also true that after so many years, the kindness of saving lives has indeed been repaid over the past decade. The birth of Song Mingzhu and the CEO are people from 2 different worlds. Now that the Shang and Shen families are about to marry, there is indeed no need for Song Mingzhu to exist. Yes. Gao Yuan nodded and turned to leave the office. I felt the vibration of my pocket phone, which was a message sent by a mysterious number about Song Mingzhu's situation at school. The information content was briefly scanned by Gao Yuan, and below are a few photos. Song Mingzhu stood in front of the blackboard on the stool, with Zhou Yichuan standing beside her. Gao Yuan noticed that the look in Song Mingzhu's eyes when he looked at Zhou Yichuan was definitely not the expression he only had when he despised someone. The relationship between them seemed not as innocent as he had heard. In the photo, There is also Song Mingzhu blocked in the corner of the wall behind the classroom. No matter how you look at it, the two are definitely not that simple. High school early love, everyone has experienced it, it's not uncommon. Even if Song Mingzhu is expelled from school for some reason, the money in her bank account is enough for her to stay worry-free in the imperial capital until she gets married. Gao Yuan looked at the tightly closed CEO's office with his phone in hand, withdrew his gaze, edited a text message, and sent. No need to report again in the future. I put my phone back into my pocket and didn't bother with those photos anymore. Before returning home, Song Mingzhu ate a bowl of noodles downstairs, took a shower, and walked out of the bathroom. Looking at the phone on the desk, she wiped her wet hair and hesitated to pick up her phone. She found only one person's phone number in the contact list, and finally gathered the courage to press the dial button. 3 seconds passed, and Song Mingzhu kept breathing while listening to the cold system sound coming from her phone.